Hello, everybody. My name is Viviana Chapman. We are here with Tom Ryan from Ryan Brothers Coffee, and we're going to take a couple minutes to talk to him about his business and how he's doing. Thank you for joining us, Tom.
Thank you, Viviana. Really super cool. We did this back in April, I believe. Is that when I did it with Fox? I think so.
Okay. Yeah, that was 6 months ago. Can you believe that?
Wow, it was such a different feeling, back then. Even the interview and just the everything. This whole COVID thing was so different in April than it is here in November. But yeah, it doesn't feel like we moved the dial much. It's just different. That's all I can tell you.
Definitely. It was different back then. We didn't realize it was going to take this long. But here we are.
Yep.
And it's November. Can you believe that? It's November already.
Wow.
I know. Wow is right. Holidays are coming up soon. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I know you had an interview before, and that was kind of how you were doing in that first month. And this is basically kind of checking up on you and your business and see how have you been doing the last few months, and telling us any new products, anything new going on at your business.
Okay, well, cool. So the timeline, has been the timeline. When this happened starting back in March, and we basically shut the economy down, businesses like mine, anyone in the hospitality service industry, transportation industry, it's just like, first of all, everything stopped. I mean, just all business stopped for a couple of weeks. April was terrible because everything was closed, at least here in California. And then, it started to, in May, we started coming out and we started opening up things. I think, we came back a little bit. I would say maybe overall about 40%, and it seems to kind of flattened out at that 40 to 50% mark. Our business we have two different businesses, essentially. We're a manufacturer of products. We roast coffee, we brew coffee, we mix powders and ingredients to make cocos and drink mixes. We blend whole leaf teas, and we package all those products too. So we do quite a bit on the production side of our business, and we distribute that to cafes and universities and restaurants and hotels and other partners through our wholesale business. And then we own and operate several retail cafes, coffee shops. And then we also have licensed partners that run Ryan Brothers coffee shops that they own and operate, not as licensees, but as brand partners. And so it's kind of their unique brand using our license to use the logo and the menu and the products and the know-how to create their own experience. So those have been good. Our airport, we were in the San Diego airport with 2 locations. Those remain closed still. Business at the airport is terrible. Travel is terrible. It has affected San Diego, obviously, a lot. We lost Comic-Con is a massive convention in July here that was canceled, as well as the entire baseball season. So there were no home games. That all drives business downtown, those 80 home games for baseball. I mean, San Diego would draw 2 to 3 million fans a year. So all that business is gone, so, and we continue, through the convention cycle, everything's been canceled. So San Diego in hospitality, obviously San Diego is a big part of our business, right? I mean, people travel here for all the sites. And then of course the convention center hosts some huge conventions. So without that travel, a big part of our economy locally is just missing, it's just missing big time. So,
sure.
And we're working around that. So some businesses have returned and some of the vital functions are operating, and we're able to service some of that. So we're kind of working, our way through all of that from a business standpoint. A little nervous about the winter. We don't know what that'll bring, and if depending on how people want to look at all this, and will there be rollbacks and more of that coming. That could just be tougher months ahead. But eventually, nothing lasts forever. Even the good times, same with the bad times.
Very true. Yeah.
So you just have to survive it. It's a phenomenal experience, good and bad. It's allowed us, I think will lead to the next thing, it's allowed us an opportunity. Some of that free space for businesses, at least from an ownership side, allows you gave you a window to review your business, to go back and completely stop working. So like, all right, let's go back, see what we were doing, what we want to go back to doing, what were we doing right and wrong. And so there has been a window to to review yourself and improve yourself, which is, when you're caught up in that old pace, you just didn't have time to do that. So that's been very interesting. And it's allowed us as a coffee roaster to explore our skill and craft and broaden it into some of the ideas that we've developed, some interesting patents that we've developed, and a different approach to our industry from multiple angles, but looking at the product itself and just totally going in a different direction than anybody else in our industry. And we'll demo that unit today, and I can talk about that whenever you want. If you'd like me to talk about the business a little bit and how we roast coffee and what we do with that coffee, and leading us to the patent.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the questions is how the pandemic has affected your business, and being in San Diego, and like you said, that summer business didn't come through to you guys. And you're only based in San Diego, all of your coffee shops, and basically you're there. Do you have a website where people can order coffee from you and get it delivered to other spots in the country?
Yeah. Our website is www.ryanbroscoffee.com. So one long word, ryanbros, coffee.com. We've actually, I was fortunate. It was about a year ago now, I started investing in our website. I found a partner that I'm working with, Quantum Digital Marketing out of Idaho. And we've partnered on the website to build a new functioning e-commerce site. Well, this was the goal anyhow. And so we were starting to move in this direction in the new year. And as the pandemic hit, we were positioned to improve that revenue center. So we weren't playing a lot of catch up. We were already kind of planning on doing that. So we were able to jumpstart that a bit because we were able to focus. It was the only production we were really doing was our e-commerce. So it was good timing to do that. That worked out pretty good for us. So that part is, the e-commerce is continued to grow and grow. And we have a nice site, and we have a good partner in it. And we've really ramped up our social media and our whole marketing approach. Because as a small business, you tend to fail on those things. There are things you overlook, because we're more interested in operations and products and purchasing and invoicing and receivables, and you get caught up in running a business. But marketing and branding a business is really hard because you got to create space for that, because it's something you think about and implement and measure over time. So it's allowed us, this window has allowed us to invest in that process and measure the result over time and see the improvement, and so invest more. That's been, I think, a great thing for us. It's allowed us to really take our brand to a much larger universe than just San Diego.
I agree with the marketing part. It's vital for a business, definitely. And then during this time, there's a lot of people soul searching, but also reinventing themselves. And it seems like you've been doing a lot of that. We're gonna get to that. I can't wait to hear of what you've been doing.
I think that's the American way. I believe in that wholeheartedly. I think that I grew up overseas. So as a little kid, my dad took a job in Indonesia, and I moved there. It's in the 70s, and ended up growing up there. We lived there for 10 years, and very, very affected by that experience, in that global experience that I was raised in, and so much of our business really comes from that. It really, really comes from that global experience, that initial experience of living in Indonesia, experiencing the wide geography of the world and the different places where coffee comes from, and really having friends in those places. And just, it touched us physically, in many ways.
That's great. So during this time, how have you changed your business model? And we kind of already discussed a little bit of that, but if you want to talk to us about that a little bit and then show us what you've got.
Yeah. I think that really is the core of the discussion. When you look at, and I'll try to be right to the point on some of this stuff, the coffee industry as a whole has not had the success, say, the beer industry has. If you look around, nationally at least, all of our cities seem to have a really bustling craft business. Like there's a lot of breweries and people go to them, and no matter what city you're in, you kind of experience that anymore. Coffee still has not quite had that success. Starbucks dominates the landscape. They were so aggressive in their real estate acquisition as they grew that brand. They just cornered so much of the market. And coffee is a drug, and it is in the morning, and it wakes us up for our job. So it became very much a regular part of our routine. But for us, as an independent small company, how do we find space in that market to have success, to open your own coffee shop, to develop your own product line? How do you do that? And of course, you start in the beginning, like all coffee players do. You get a coffee roaster and you learn to roast coffee, and you buy green bean coffees from different countries. You roast them, you put them in bags, and you sell them to consumers or to just end users. You sell them coffees, you sell them teas, you sell them powders, ingredients and things to make drinks. That is sort of the fundamental core of how the coffee industry operates. And it's a failure. It's a horrible failure. There's a ton of waste. When you think about handing raw ingredients to end users, coffee, teas, cocos, powders, and expecting them to craft a finished product, just that very act has inherent waste, right? I mean, like, it's just not a successful way to hand off a commodity. When you look at the beer industry or the wine industry, they finish the process. That is, they buy the grapes, they crush the grapes, they make the wine, they give you a bottle. In the beer business, they buy the barley and the hops, and they buy all the ingredients, and they make the beer, and they give it to you in a keg or a bottle or a can. And it's a simple process. It's inherently successful because it uses the resource to its maximum, right? And it limits waste tremendously. Coffee guys, on the other hand, we're giving them all the raw ingredients. We're selling commodities to people that half the time don't know what they're even doing with them. And then you look at how the industry operates. That is the waste. When you look at a typical commercial function, you have a coffee brewer brewing coffee. Hot coffee, water coming through the grinds into pots, sitting on heaters or sitting in thermoses, and it has a lifespan. And that lifespan could be, depending on the company that you're in, could be 1 hour to 4 hours before you got to dump what's in there and brew again on a freshness standard. And so just that behavior of brewing fresh and dumping, all that dumping, we already know just from a commercial standpoint, because we supply coffee to all the hotels and restaurants and office space, like they buy our product. We measure the waste, we know it, and we know that realistically it's 30 to 50% waste daily. And really, in some cases, and I won't even say names, sometimes as much as 100% waste. If you have a large banquet and you've rented out space at the convention center and you have a 4 o'clock meeting, by contract, you purchase the coffee service for anybody that was looking to wake up in the afternoon. And if you stand there and watch those big urns of coffee, there are some days where not one single person will draw a cup from that. And they could be 6 gallons of product just sitting there. And so when you take that and measure it daily and hourly and across the globe, and you start to see that, like, this, just our very model in coffee is so dated, and so it needs moved. It needs moved forward in the way that it conserves a resource. We're putting this tremendous pressure on farmers in faraway poor countries to provide more and more coffee that we dump faster and faster down the sink. You know, like, it's like, it needs to stop. Like, stop the madness and let's look at the resource and how can we get more from the same resource. Like, it's logical that when you're paying all this money to buy this product, you just naturally, intuitively look at the value of the resource. You can't help it, you know, because you're buying it and you're looking at, like, how much can I get from this 1 pound of coffee? So kind of, this has been our conundrum. This has been hard. So we try to sell the price, you know, a little more, another $1 a pound, try to squeeze a little more money out of the buyer. But it's just a hard business to succeed in without huge volume or huge economy of scale. And so we kind of, and as we're going through this long struggle of business for 10, 20 years, we're watching our brothers in the beer business, especially here in San Diego, where the craft beer business exploded. And you can just sort of see the culture of the breweries and the locals and everybody going to them, and everyone has one in their neighborhood. And you just kind of see this, and the men and the women are together. And the women are no longer just in wine bars; they're with the guys drinking beers, and it's a shift culturally in a generation. So this togetherness is a cool thing, and it lends to coffee as well. As the same customers tend to come to us. So we watch, you know, and you're looking at them. You got this one brewer, just one, in the warehouse brewing 1,000 gallons of perfection, and bottling and canning and kegging every one of these and selling it and moving it through. And it doesn't matter if it's in the 7-Eleven or a high-end hotel or in a keg on a tap system, you got the same experience. And we're selling ingredients to all the breweries. They're buying our coffees and our teas, and we're participating as partners in beers that they're crafting using our ingredients. And it just kind of finally occurs to you, like, what if we finished our products? Like, what if we brewed vanilla lattes? And if we did a vanilla latte, what if we took the milk out and just made it a vanilla cold brew and put it on a draft system and offered cold vanilla latte non-dairy cold brew? I mean, if you can make it in a cup, you can make it in a 500-gallon vat. It's just sort of scale and a little bit of science. But you can certainly think like that. And that's what we started doing. We started looking at all of our cold drinks, our Mexican mochas, our vanilla lattes, and dirty chais and everything. And like, could we brew these and keg them and put them on draft? And we did, and it worked beautifully. So we were doing all this different cold brew, and suddenly you come to our bar, and I'll be taking you all up there a little bit later. There's this big draft system right in the middle of the bar. It looks like an old Western bar with 12 different tap handles on it. And so immediately there's a cultural shift on our bar. It's no longer a coffee bar, it's a bar. And the Pavlovian response from consumers is sort of like, oh, there's draft handles. There's something cold and refreshing in there. It's just very natural for especially Americans to think that. But everybody thinks that. Europeans, everyone, they see those draft handles, they're intrigued. So immediately now it's, I call it like an Americanized coffee bar. We suddenly changed the script and the narrative. We put this draft system with a bartender and a towel over their shoulder, pouring samples of cold brews and drafts over ice. And it's very comfortable to the customer, right? And I think that that in itself is very intuitive just to the consumer. Plus, it speeds up our service. So if you want an iced vanilla latte, you're no longer standing in line waiting for an espresso machine to make 2 shots of espresso that you dump into the milk, that you dump into the powder, and some barista stirs and pours over ice, and like you're waiting 3 minutes for your drink, right? But now it's on draft, so it's like a 15-second pour. We cap it, and you're out the door. You're not waiting in line for that. So it really improved our efficiency and our service level and the customer experience. It was a great shift and a really good use of the resource. And cold brew had been catching on at this point. You see black cold brew coffees everywhere kind of at this point. We were doing those anyhow, but we started making all these other drinks. And of course you get wacky. Once you start brewing, all bets are off. You can do anything you want. There is no rules to brewing. You put any ingredients together and either it's terrible or it's not, or it's great. It's going to be something. And we got the idea of a green coffee. So we buy coffee from countries. It comes in burlap sacks, green and raw, and we cook it and make coffee. But we got the idea of taking that same coffee and extracting the caffeine that's in it or the juice that's in it. I just brew it raw as a green coffee and then add mint to it to kind of clean it up. And so we put that on draft system so people could come in and drink raw green coffee with mint in it. And the caffeine's crazy good. It lasts 2 hours instead of 30 minutes. It's
Sounds good.
Yeah, you're not jittery. It's a totally different caffeine experience because it came off the tree. It never went through the oven. So it's kind of in that natural polyphenol state like tea is. So all the molecules are natural. And so the caffeine molecules in its natural state, which is stubborn and resistant. So as you drink this, you absorb it much slower over time at a steady rate, as opposed to coffee when it goes through our coffee roaster and we go to 450 degrees. We change the structure of that bean so much just from that agitation of roasting that the caffeine molecule itself is highly unstable. So when you drink a traditional cup of coffee, the caffeine falls apart very quickly in your body. So within 20 to 30 minutes, the effect of a regular cup of coffee has kind of worn off. So we go back and we get more. Right? We get more to try to keep that going. So that was kind of interesting. We were just playing around with it and kind of stumbled into something crazy in that green coffee. But that's what happens once you start handling your own ingredients and brewing it as a craft brewer, using the equipment. So, and I guess I'll lead us to the patent. I know I'm going on here, but it got us thinking about, but yeah, everybody loves hot coffee, right? Like you can't change that, can you? And it's just like, why can't you? Why can't you take cold brew coffee and make it hot again? And if you were going to make it hot again, how would you do that? And that's when we got just, my brother really was inspired by the idea, and he got the idea of just a simple water heater you would buy at Home Depot and put under your kitchen sink or bathroom sink for an on-demand water. He's like, well, what if we put this inside of a beer tower and connected a keg to it, just like you would a water line, and ran coffee through it? It's black water, right? I mean, there's nothing magical. It's black water. Yeah, that's some oils, but like what would happen? The worst thing it's going to have is going to blow up the heater, right? So and oh my gosh, even though we didn't get the temperature right and all that at first pass, but you could see it was like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome because the nitrogen itself, you push cold brew through the draft system with nitrogen. And when nitrogen would hit that heating element, it would expand and cascade into the beverage like a Guinness stout beer. So the nitrogen naturally nitrogenates and it creates this draft experience with a thick, creamy head on top, almost like a latte. So it's a really interesting effect on the beverage. And because we use cold brew techniques, we didn't extract as many solubles. That's why cold brew is so popular, using colder water or warm water to extract flavor, but you're not pulling all the oils and all the things that tend to upset our stomach. So cold brew is a much cleaner, smoother product. And because of the long brew time, it's also higher in caffeine because it's in the water longer. So cold brew itself is just kind of a cleaned up version of the drug. It's cleaner and healthier for you in many ways, right? And so when you take it through this brew process and make it hot again, you get this super smooth, clean product at 170 degrees. And that was the concept and the idea. We patented that idea. We also trademarked the term hot draft. We actually own the registered mark hot draft, which is crazy because I never thought we'd get that because it's such a generic phrase, and the trademark office doesn't typically grant generic phrases because they end up in court. But hot draft was such a conundrum, you know, it's never been used before. Cold draft has been used for hundreds of years. Hot draft's never been used once. So we got that trademark, which is super cool. And then, of course, we started thinking about other products. It doesn't just have to be coffee that goes through this unit. If you like sake, some people like hot sake. In theory, you could take a keg of sake and run it hot or cold, because that's what I'm going to show you today is you put the keg of product in the refrigerator and you split the line, and one faucet's 40 degrees and the other faucet is 170 degrees. So you can really stretch your ingredients further and create hot and cold options. Tea is amazing on it. And then the great thing about it is every ounce of that coffee in that keg is drank. Nothing's thrown out. So it's hooked up, 15 gallons of coffee are consumed. So you go literally from a 30 or 50% waste model to zero, call it 5%. And I mean, just that idea that it's a complete on-demand, an on-demand coffee system. So it's like the perfect sustainable model for the coffee industry. So when we're looking at sustainability, and not only that, we don't need to use as much coffee necessarily as we would to brew an equivalent amount. So we're able to use resources.
Less waste.
Way less waste, and you're totally moving in that sustainable direction. You know, you can imagine that as we develop this technology of brewing and kegging, that if the farmers embrace the technology and quit selling their beans, they could literally roast and brew their own coffee and sell kegs of coffee and change a worldwide model. I think the vision could go that far. Will be long gone, but it has that kind of pathway, because this entire century, this entire election, we're talking about climate change and sustainability and resource management. And I don't care where you are politically, we are straining our resource management beyond belief. So any answer in that direction is going to be embraced and is a future vision. And we're moving in that direction. And then a pandemic comes along and you look at this new system. I mean, in a typical coffee shop, everybody's touching the product. You're given a bag of coffee and there's hands in the bag and there's stuff in the paper filter in there. And it's a complete human brewing experience, right? Now, the coffee is brewed in our lab by one person in a smock and goggles in a sanitized environment, in a sanitized keg, and then put on a vacuum system. So nobody ever touches the product. Nothing, the air doesn't touch it, the nitrogen protects all that. So it's a completely vacuum product, and it's just served in a cup by a handler, you know, so there's really no interaction with the product. So it's going to be a much safer way and healthier way to handle an ingredient. And that has just kind of become an added benefit, you know, to that. So it's been an amazing revelation. It's a scary place because you feel very alone in this space, because you've stumbled into something that nobody else did. I mean, we own the patent worldwide, you know, and
fantastic.
And it's been tested, you know, and of course it's already been pirated once. We didn't even have our first production model, and a unit was coming out of China already doing this. Complete piece of junk for $3,000 that leaked everywhere, a huge mess. But it was incredible that somebody was combing the trademark offices and patent offices, and they saw that, and they tasked out somebody to try to do something with that.
Wow.
You know, and that's the reality of that. But the vision is we have a great partner that is now building the unit commercially. And I think that, you know, when we have we're very close to having a go-to-market model available. And so we have a half a dozen randomly throughout San Diego that we've been beta testing. These are the units we built, and they were very beefy with 40 amp electric. So that's not common. But that's what we needed to get 170 degrees. But the experience across the spectrum, from Hewlett-Packard, where we went into HP's lab. They have a thing called the Oasis, where all the engineers and workers come on campus to congregate and share ideas and just be together. This is pre-COVID. And the coffee is complimentary, and we replaced the traditional brewed coffee in the big urns and put kegs in 2 different handles cut their waste in half, kind of prove that that waste was true. We eliminated 50% of what they were purchasing before, and just created this cool draft experience for everybody there, and then put a kegerator in with cold brew teas on it as an alternative. And just a great model going there, and just getting some traction into it. So this discussion's been on the table there in the San Diego location. We're doing our coffees throughout the office break rooms, but before the COVID, we were just starting to talk about implementing these changes and bringing the sustainable model throughout campus. And the model we're building now is a 20 amp unit, which means it literally can be plugged in anywhere.
That sounds fantastic. I'm intrigued and definitely interested.
Yeah, it's crazy, guys. I mean, who does that? Who takes their coffee brewer off the counter and puts this in its place and runs a successful coffee shop? You don't do that. You just don't do that to coffee, not to coffee drinkers. Coffee drinkers don't even like if you change the flavor, let alone the process. I mean, are you kidding me? And all we've had is a positive response to it. So it's been something. COVID has allowed us to really singularly focus on that patent with our partner, who might have also been more distracted in other projects, but have been a much slower process. We've made a ton of progress in 9 months that would have probably been 24 months. Maybe by the whole time the whole process is done, will have taken us about a year. It should have taken us 2 years to 2.5 years. So it's exciting, you know. So that's for us. That's something we've worked in the background on while we're trying to resuscitate our business and our relationships and keep some kind of cash flow and revenue going, because that was tough. We had to furlough everybody initially, and have only brought back 10% of the workforce. And so that's been tough. That watching that the old model go away, it had nothing to do with your performance or behavior. It was completely externally forced on it. That's hard, those relationships, because I know a lot of the people I know won't be coming back even when they come back, so you'll be going back to your relationships, kind of starting fresh, starting new. So good time to have a new idea.
Definitely. You've been busy. Well, I can't wait to see your coffee saloon, I guess what we're calling, or your coffee pub.
It's so funny because I think we're inspired. You're inspired by your surroundings, and I think we're very much that way, whether we know it or not. And our bar that I'm going to take you to, this bar is from the 1800s, and it belonged to the James family. Jesse James's relatives owned a winery in Paso Robles. And
I did not know that.
This bar was in the barn at the winery back in the 1800s. And when Jesse James and them would come through, they obviously stayed with the family up there, and they would drink at the bar. And so it was there for 100 years. And in the 1970s, the family kind of weren't doing the wine business anymore. They had this huge plot of land, though. And so a large player just wanted the vineyards, wanted the land to expand their wine business. So they bought the land and auctioned off all the physical assets. So the house, the barn, the bar got auctioned off, and an architect brought it to San Diego and put it in a historic landmark downtown, one of our old coffee shops. And long story short, we ended up inheriting that bar. We took it out of there when they were going to destroy it.
No, you really have to show us.
It's so cool. We had found out the story about it, just accidentally when we were there, and just nobody valued it. And then we vetted it, and it was true. So we have this old 25-foot oak beveled glass bar that, it's a Western bar. And so it feels like a saloon, you know what I mean? Like when you approach it, and all these like draft handles, it's not a coffee house experience. It's a coffee brewery experience. And that's the new model. We believe that.
Wait to see it.
Yeah, we believe that the new model in the coffee industry is to move from roasting to brewing. Not only will you conserve the resource better, one of the other things about roasting coffee is, we are a polluter. We're forced to go through a lot of EPA regulations to mitigate our smoke and our aroma in the roasting process that other states aren't. West Coast requires that, but a lot of states across the country do not require an afterburner to clean up their burn off. But we do here, and it's an expensive part. Just running that furnace that incinerates the smoke probably costs $3,000-$4,000 a month, just the gas bill for that particular machine. So that part alone, if you could roast a little less and get more distance out of your ingredient, is definitely a goal. It uses less natural gas, less emissions, And you can imagine the idea on the green coffee I was telling you about. How about we don't roast coffee at all? How about we eliminate that entire process and we learn to use the raw coffee and create flavor? If you could do that, I mean,
Groundbreaking, absolutely.
we're like crazy entrepreneurs that way, you know, like we just have all of those ideas. And I think so much of that, once again, getting back to growing up and being so remote back in those days and kind of in your own creative space, because that's how the 1970s were anyhow. And then if you were 17,000 miles away in Indonesia, you were even more creative with your time. I think it's a way of thinking, and it kind of comes back to that early discussion about, I think it's very American to be innovative. I think we wake up that way. We just, you know, freedom gives you that DNA. You know, you don't always respect it or appreciate it or even know you have that talent, but we have amazing know-how to work through problems. I see it all the time. I'm always in awe of it because I've lived in different cultures, been around so many different cultures, and just I'm always in awe by that ingenuity of so many different people here. It seems to be in our soil. It doesn't matter what your race or ethnic. It doesn't even matter what your gender is. It's just in so many different people, that creative experience, you know, and betting on that, you know, I'm betting on that because I think that's the industry of the 21st century, is creativity and use your brain to find solutions to problems, you know.
Maybe it's in the coffee we drink.
Yes, it is in there with a hot draft. So
There you go.
I'm gonna switch over to my phone and kind of walk you guys through the warehouse a little bit right now. We're not roasting coffee, unfortunately, right now, but just kind of show you the kegs, cleaning machine, and then we're gonna walk up into the cafe. Unfortunately, it's so sad. The coffee shops, you know, that was always such a bustling experience, right? It was so social, and it's the community. And we're at this particular coffee shop we're in a very famous location in San Diego. We're in Barrio Logan, and right attached to the Welcome to Barrio Logan sign. And this is an old Latino community with a lot of pride. This was a famous Mexican restaurant for decades before us. And so we're on the forefront of a lot of changes going on. Some of it is gentrification, and there's a lot of anxiety here about that. I sit on the planning board for this community. We're actually doing a plan update for Barrio Logan, and it's the oldest plan in the state of California, and the people here have been deprived of quality air and for many, many generations. So it's a really cool time here. We're in a really interesting spot, and our building is a political lightning rod. It always has been, because we're just outside of downtown and we're on the way to a lot of places, and you never know who's going to walk through the door here. And so that's the kind of place it was. And now it's just people in masks and no one's really together like that. So I don't know what you can see when we go up there. You may not even see anybody, and the few you do may be a mask, that it's just not going to have that feeling. But that is who kind of, you know, that is what the front, you'll love our coffee shop. And we're in an old brick building with the gabled roof, with the steel trusses. So it's kind of a San Francisco. It's a property you guys will be familiar with in your area, but there's not a lot of them in Southern California. Most of it's very stucco down here. So it's rare to see a red brick building with that old foundry style, you know. It's a unique property. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then
All right.
Cool,
So we're
back.
going to take a little
tour.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're gonna do a little tour. So Rachel's holding the camera right now, so everybody can
Hi,
say
Rachel.
Hi,
Hello.
She's out here putting together some internet orders. This is stuff we talked about a little bit on our earlier chat. This is our e-commerce packages, shipping coffees everywhere. So this is something we're doing a lot of every day now. So we're getting ready for a busy holiday season and doing a lot of cool promotions. One of the coffees we'll feature, we only do during the holidays, is our Christmas roast. And the way we make this coffee is we take it out of the roaster hot and put it in a mixing chamber. And we add a special extract on it that's kind of like a caramel spice and chocolate. And then we garnish it with pure cocoa while it's warm, and we put it in a tumbler in a mixer, and the coffee just kind of absorbs all that. So you end up with like a chocolate coffee. It's amazing. No sugars or anything. Cool flavor. And we only do it at Christmas, during the Christmas season. So we're going to promote it this year on the website. We're going to make it, I think, our Black Friday special on the web. So we're going to sell either individual bags or cases of 12 with free shipping and good deals. So look for that if you guys go to the website. But that's something we'll be doing pretty soon. So as you follow me through, you can kind of see all our kegs. These are some kegs right here. I don't know if Rachel can angle those down, but these are some of the ones we brewed yesterday. This is one of our famous blends of coffee called Cowboy Coffee. We have a fair trade organic Peru here. These are all traditional beer kegs. So this is 15-gallon half barrel, they call it. This is what we would always see beer in, but now we're brewing coffees in here and hooking them up to that hot drink unit that I'm going to show you guys too. For the cold brew and all the flavors, we use the smaller kegs. So we use the 5-gallon kegs to make all our different flavors. And we do a vanilla latte, we do an Irish cream latte, we do a dirty chai, we have a Mexican mocha, we have cafe de olla. I don't know if you've ever had cafe de olla, but a real traditional Mexican coffee. So we have that on draft as well. So anything you can brew, any creative idea, any expression, any cross fusion, we've tried and put in kegs. Put them in these 5-gallon kegs and put them on our draft system up front. Kind of cleaning up right now, but I'll show you a little roasting area here. These are some of our different coffee bags that we get in from all over the world. They come from all kinds of different countries. Right now, we've got them from Sumatra, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Papua New Guinea, Kenya, Costa Rica, Peru. So we have a wide variety of coffee. So we roast them in this machine over here, which you can kind of see afar. We're cleaning over here right now, but that is our coffee roaster. We do these 150-pound sacks in that roaster, put them in this barrel, and then just kind of cure them. We do create some of our own blends, like I showed you in that barrel. This is called Cowboy Coffee. It's maybe our most popular coffee. It's a mix of dark French roast with medium roast Indonesian coffee. So it's a real smoky, balanced coffee. I think people love the name. Cowboy Coffee was something we came up with before we knew what we wanted it to be. So the name itself sells, and then it's just it's such one of our best blends. It's a very balanced, big flavored coffee, which is hard to do. Normally, it's hard to get it balanced. So that's kind of the coffee operations over there. We move about what we were before the COVID. We would probably do about 10 to 12,000 pounds a month of coffee. Right now, we're at about 25% of that volume-wise. So that I'm sure will have an impact on pricing at some point in the future because there's a glut of coffee building in warehouses, right? Because everything is slowed down. And at some point, that coffee goes past crop, they call it, and then the price has to be reduced 50%. It really can create a lot of instability. But we can talk about that some other time. This is our keg cleaning room. So we bring these kegs when they're done and they're empty. We hook them up to this machine that then sanitizes and cleans all these vessels. So all of these kegs have been completely sanitized and filled with nitrogen to protect them from any environmental conditions. So when we hook these up to our filler in our cold brew or hot draft, they're a completely sanitized, safe vessel, which is, so much better than a bag of coffee or a box of coffee. Like that is really disease proof. So this is we're heading up to coffee shop. So this is where the business changes from the production model to our retail model. It's quiet here, like I was saying today. We're going to go around the front and show some of the experiences. So we've got some people playing with our hot draft. And this is kind of how the bar looks from the customer perspective. We were talking a little bit earlier how you have that draft system right in the middle. So as a customer, you walk up and you're kind of just looking at this. And all of these are different flavors of coffees that we have. So we have our traditional Raceway Espresso. That's kind of like our house black coffee cold brew. We were featuring Ethiopia, but I see a cup on it, so it must have gone empty. The vanilla latte, the Irish cream latte, the dirty chai. We have the Cowboy Coffee on tap. The Mexicano, which is our best seller. So this is a non-dairy Mexican mocha cold brew. We have pumpkin spice for the holidays. That's also non-dairy, so we're doing a pumpkin spice cold brew. Then we have that green coffee I was telling you about, the super green. When you see that coffee poured, because you can't taste it, unfortunately. If you guys were here right now, I'd get everybody samples. But when you see it poured, it looks like a green tea. So it throws everybody off initially. And this is the product right here. So that's the green coffee. We have a red tea and we have a black tea as well. So we have a good full offering of cold brew products for the customer. But then I wanted to take you guys in. Of course, we're doing like our beer partners. We're selling a lot of this stuff in growlers. We sell so many of these. It's unbelievable how many people are like, oh yeah, good. I can get that in a growler, and they buy this and they fill them up. So this has been a really good model for us that way because people can take it with them. So when we head back to the bar
looks
back
like
here,
a
so
beer,
our hot,
actually.
doesn't it?
It sure
doesn't it?
does.
Okay, come on this way. So one of the innovations we were talking about was that hot draft. Okay, so this right here, I don't see you can see this, but this is a traditional kegerator, very simple, like you might even have in your garage. Fits one barrel of beer in there. In this case, we have a barrel of coffee. So it's running at 40 degrees right now. We have that in there. We have 2 lines. So that line coming out of the system, I split in 2. One comes directly to this handle. The other one goes into this tower and goes through the heating process. So depending on what you want, the same coffee is going to be hot and the same coffee is going to be cold. So if you want to take a quick look at maybe just the science of it, I'm going to lift this lid. So this is the unit itself. Can you see that, Viviana?
I can,
Can
yes.
you see it okay?
Uh-huh.
So basically, yeah, the coffee comes up and it goes in here, goes through here, it comes out this big, long heating element, and it goes through the solenoid and out. So it has to go up and be controlled through that process. That's the basic science. It's very, very simple. So the line comes up, runs over the heating element, out through the solenoid, and out through the handle. So I got a clear cup to kind of demonstrate it. So when you pull it pulls just like a draft beer. So it's more of a draw. We use a Guinness stout. So this is the kind of faucet you would use for like Guinness beer or any kind of stout beer that uses nitrogen. Most beers are pushed with CO2. That's why they're real bubbly or they can be real foamy. Nitrogen is a denser gas. And so as a result, the foam is much tighter. And that's why you get that creamy finish in like a Guinness stout or something. So basically, and I'll let you really zoom in on that. You can see right now, so the coffee itself is highly nitrogenated. Right now, the nitrogen is kind of just bouncing up and down for a little bit, and you're going to see it start layering. So there's the black coming through. That's the coffee itself. The gas is really bouncing up and down the product. It literally, so nitrogen acts like a sponge as well. So that's why it's so prevalent in the atmosphere and so important in our atmosphere. It's absorbing impurities or it's absorbing things that don't belong in here right now through this agitation, and it's creating foam at the same time. So you can see the product is this kind of layering. We're about halfway through right now, and about another 30 seconds or so, it will settle with just a nice little creamy texture on top, which is a really geeky way to talk about coffee, right?
No, this is so
time,
intriguing. Look, it just
it's
changed.
such a different.
It's so cool. Wow.
Yeah, it changes everything. And you can turn if you want the same coffee cold. You know, it's the same exact coffee. It's going to look very similar, but instead, it's, you know, it's going to be 30 to 40 degrees. So it's the perfect cold brew. So just like the hot coffee, the nitrogen is doing this kind of thing in there. It's layering. And so when you're done, you're going to have the exact same product at 170 degrees and degrees. And that's just black coffee that we're playing with. You can imagine if we were to take our Mexican mocha in a keg, people love our Mexican mocha. If you were to put the Mexican mocha up to this draft system, you could be pouring Mexican mochas at 170 degrees or 40 degrees, which is just pow. That kind of stuff is mind blowing because it's really putting the craft back in the hands of the people that know the product the most. That's really what has that culturally, that's what has to happen in the industry. Is that someone has to maintain the resource and get the most creative use out of it, the most creative use. You know, when Starbucks came along in those early 90s primarily, it was such a new experience in the US, you know, like this new coffee culture. We went from your mom and dad's old black coffee on the table with cream and beer to this espresso-based experience. And so it rocked the industry, just absolutely gutted the industry. No one was ready for it to compete against it. I can promise you that's for sure. But at the same time, it was such a new experience. Blending into a culture that was becoming more mobile. We were traveling rapidly everywhere. So our whole culture like shifted right when they started that company. So their timing was perfect, but it only works for them. It doesn't work for anybody else. That's the problem. And all the suppliers in our industry are catering their model towards them. And then we get the residual development. You know, that's how it kind of falls off the trickle down to everybody else. So the funny part is when you look at all this technology I'm showing you, whether it's cold brew on draft or hot brew here, virtually all the equipment and technology we're using comes from the beer industry, not the coffee industry. None of our major companies even make a machine to make cold brew. They make nothing. They give you a kettle, a big bowl that you have at home already. They're not even embracing the idea that the industry has shifted towards cold brew at the very least. And how could they be as the major manufacturers? How could they be out of the loop, not supplying technology and ideas. Instead, I go to all the beer guys and buy their faucets, buy their handles, all their mechanical parts, all their systems. And so it's funny because some of those coffee companies have been around for over 100 years. And conceivably with ideas like this, they wouldn't even be around at all, because they're not making what tomorrow's consumers want, which are kegs and things to fill kegs, coffee to brew for kegs, and machines to dispense kegs. Basically, where so much is headed. It's a smarter business model. It's not a trend. I don't think this is just a better way to do this business.
Wow.
Do you have any questions, Vivian?
My mind is blown right now, but I was wondering, could we?
Look at I'm going to show you the building a little bit.
I was going to ask if we could see more of the cafe and the bar, that historical bar. I would love to take a look a little bit at.
Yeah,
that.
I forgot to mention. I had mentioned that, but yes, this is the
Part of history.
Here, all the beveled glass. We had to modify it for the spot. The mirror itself. I don't know if you can see the mirror was always part of it too. There used to be 2 big back bars that didn't survive, but it was an unbelievable, find. To be able to get that for zero. The fact that it was just going to be wasted or thrown out.
It's beautiful, and it's a beautiful space.
It is
too.
It is such a, you can see the red brick, the flag up here. I always forget to mention, but that particular flag was a flag that was given to, so San Diego's a big Navy town. We have the 32nd Street base here. So the USS Valley Forge was at sea on 9/11 when the towers went down, and that flag was flying at sea on that day at that moment. And so when they retired the ship, my next door neighbor was a captain. He got the ship. They gave it to us. So this particular flag was from the USS Valley Forge, just now decommissioned, that was flying on 9/11. So it's very personal. That's not very real. And then we have some other. It's a really eclectic building. So I don't know if Rachel had shown you the murals up there, but the whole crown of the building is painted with murals. And these murals, so the area that we were in, Barrio Logan, has a very famous place called Chicano Park. And Chicano Park is it's a rallying point for Hispanics because for 50 years, they've defended this park as theirs, and they've painted murals under the bridges, and they're not graffiti. I mean, they are true murals, and some of them are political messages. Sometimes they're just cultural messages, but it's become a park now. And so it's a big part of our community. And some of the original muralists there also painted the mural on our building. And so the mural all along our building is the historical timeline of San Diego. So they painted in moments in time here from the tuna industry all the way back to the early days of the Spanish conquistadors. So it's really cool. It sets a tone for this whole building and all the colors that you'll see here. We did acid stained floors. So we did all these floors ourselves. We have a sun over here. We carved a coffee tree over here. You can see that. So basically we drew a coffee tree into the cement, and a specialized cement cutter came in and cut all those grooves, and then we stained that with acid stain to create a coffee tree. And it's actually a coffee tree that depicts a very famous tree in Brazil. So that's kind of like the Brazilian national tree right there on the floor. So the building has so much great style. And then the this Becak here actually comes from Indonesia. There's a good chance we may have actually ridden in this thing at one point back in the 1970s. But this thing is so cool. It's still got all the original painting on it. Just a big, heavy vehicle. And it's, when you live there, 2-3 guys would jump in here, and one small Indonesian with calves like that big, which is
it actually looks comfortable to sit in.
Yeah, it was. These were awesome.
Do you allow your customers to sit in it?
Yeah, we do. We take pictures in here constantly, So it's so funny because we didn't bring it with us. We moved into Barrio Logan, a Hispanic community, and here was a Becak from Jakarta right across the street, sitting in an antique dealer. It was like a ghost followed us here with this Becak. How could we find it here? So we made a deal, and it's ours. So it sets the tone. But when you see the building kind of from here, as a customer, so you can kind of turn it around, it just gives you a good scope of just very artistic, eclectic type of space with really cool features. Everything we do here.
Beautiful space. Really gorgeous.
And here's all I'll show you these, Viviana. These are the patents that we've received. So the patent that I sent you is right here, the official patent for the hot draft. This is the trademark registration hot draft. And our freestyle espresso press, which we haven't even talked about, is down here. This is a whole nother piece of equipment that we designed and patented to get rid of espresso machines. So we went back to the future and we took a French press and modified the design to create an espresso press so that all of our espresso drinks are made from scratch. You put fresh coffee in, you press them from scratch, and you pull them. And it's very quick and efficient, and it gets rid of that big $15,000 espresso machine that breaks every 30 days. And once again, puts the focus back on the product and not on the machinery. And we can talk about that some other time, but it's a really cool thing. So this kind of began the crazy process of like innovating, so that when you look at our coffee bar now, and you can't quite see it from here, but technically there's no espresso machine and there's no coffee brewer. So what kind of coffee bar has no espresso machine, no coffee brewer? It's not a coffee bar, right?
Yours.
That's the future right there, is to make something far more sustainable. I mean, if you wanted to open a coffee shop, Viviana, just on the equipment alone, you would invest tens of thousands of dollars on grinders and boilers and espresso machines. And the worst part about it is the owner, you would have zero knowledge on how to take care of them. Like, so you're completely a victim of the technology and the service companies that come in and just hammer you on their calls. So the industry is just constantly getting killed because coffee makes a mess and it breaks machines. It's just the way it is. So the idea was, how could we create a bar that isn't so machine dependent and instead deliver finished product to end users so that they're serving, you know, not worrying about calling the technician to come and fix the espresso machine. So it really was inspired by our need to make our operation better. You know, how can we do things better for ourselves in every sort of way? And then it works for everybody else, because of course it does. It works for us, and we're in the industry. So if you embrace this, and you have to embrace the idea that, and it's passion. You know, I talk about passion and coffee and stuff. Like, you have to want to do this. It's nothing like going to a hotel and trying to get the contract, and the food and beverage manager doesn't even like coffee. You know, their only concern is, if my machine breaks, are you available 7 days a week? Like that, it's all operations. Like, their total focus is operations, not on like quality experience. I mean, you're going there as a guest and you're spending a lot of money in some of these hotels, $300, $400, $500, $700 a night. You know, the food and beverage manager's job is to have great products everywhere, and it's amazing how often there's no passion for that. So in the end, if you own your own business and you want to be in the coffee business, you have to love this stuff. You know, like, you have to do it whether you make money or not, and then you're more likely to find those nuggets, you know, great revelations and cool ideas, because you're living it. And that's really, I think, what's happened to us, is we live this business so much. It's not about the balance sheet. That changes every year, and that's hard. But we do this for a lifestyle and for really just the passion for it, you know.
There's what's that saying? Necessity drives invention.
Yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's
yes.
exactly what you guys have done right there. That you found a need and with that you invented all this wonderfulness and patented and made a whole new industry, really.
I mean, that's where that crazy vision is coming. You know, it's coming full vision, right? Like, it's coming all the way, all that energy and creativity and worldly experiences of children. Like, it's all really bubbling up. And even the business itself, the inspiration for this business, and you're handling good.
I'm just like making sure it's not trembling.
Rachel's hand is starting to like fall asleep on it. But the you know, even the inspiration of the businesses, you know, we're talking the 1980s, and my dad had worked 10 years in Indonesia. He was kind of disconnected from the economy here. He didn't have his relationships and business contacts to come home and resume a career. And it was a hard recession during the 80s. And Dad really struggled reestablishing himself here, back home. And it was a hard 10 years for us as a family, very hard. And so really the inspiration of the business was to create something that we all could do together to kind of keep family together, particularly in a city like San Diego, where we wanted to be. So as expats, we're gypsies, we're living all over the world, and we're coming home. Where are you going to go? We're from Pittsburgh, but I love Pittsburgh, but I'm not sure we want to go back there after spending all that time in Jakarta. So, you know, San Diego became the target, and for so many obvious reasons. And so the question becomes, how do you stay there? How do you come to San Diego and make it home? And so we started the business really just to create a space for my dad to work and my mom. And they did. They worked with us. We just had a little coffee cart and expanded our entire business off of one simple coffee cart at a university. So, slowly like that, almost like the Shawshank Redemption, with that little gem hammer, man, we have dug ourselves out of a hole. For
Little by
25
little.
years. It is, man. It'll be a legendary story. In the end, you may never see us again. We're going to go down to San Juantaneo, and that'll be the end. Okay.
I love Sawataneo. It's beautiful there. You'll love it. Well, thank you so much for the tour.
Yes.
That was lovely.
Yes. Come on, we'll head back to the.
Tom, thank you so much for taking your time to talk with us and showing us what an amazing space you have, and honestly, what you have done and during this time and your patents. It's quite unique, and I'm looking forward to bringing your products into our units and tasting it personally. I can't wait to taste it. And thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you, Vivian. I always enjoy doing these, and we do value our relationship with Intuit and see so much opportunity there for us and for Intuit to create a real transparent, like authentic, sustainable experience. Like as you look for those solutions, we have a lot of those solutions. So we're excited about that opportunity and the culture of Intuit, and it fits us real well. And we just miss our people, we miss all you guys, and we miss that environment, and that whole social interaction has been missing a lot. It's been very lonely. Quite frankly, we're busy, but it's been very lonely for 9 months, just in general. The mood and the feeling is ran lonely. So just looking forward to just people back at their lives, and it's going to be a while. I know that. So we're armored for the fight, that's for sure, but it'll be very nice to sit at a baseball game next summer, maybe, and like just get sunburnt and drunk.
A lot of us are looking forward to that, let me tell you.
Oh my God, so simple. It's such a simple request, right? Can I just do that on the bleachers? I'll fall asleep. I won't hurt anybody.
Absolutely. I think a lot of us are waiting to do just those basic things that maybe we took for granted before. And now we're just like, oh, please let it happen soon.
I know, it's crazy.
I can't wait. Even just the basic of going into a place like yours and having people around us conversating, people watching. It's something I love to do. And, not too much people watching can be done right now, but yeah.
Coffee shops are great for that. Coffee shops are so for that too, aren't they? It's like the best people watching place.
Oh my gosh,
because there's so many weird people. Everybody's so different, and they're weird with coffee, and it's eclectic. It is the best place to come people watch. I miss all those people.
Me too. I can't wait. Well,
we'll
thank you so much. Absolutely. And I can't wait for that to happen, because we're all missing. You miss us, we miss you. So we're all looking forward to somewhat coming back to society.
Cheers.
But thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon.